Welcome back. Happy New Year's. It's New Year's Eve. I hope you have a great New Year's. I hope you had a great holiday. Today we're talking about Winter Classics in Canada. Hasn't happened to this point. Got my Winnipeg Jets jersey on. Saw a game in Winnipeg last a little over a year ago. Got my Montreal Expos hat on. Saw a game in Montreal in Olympic Stadium, I don't know, like 20 years ago. Live outside of DC where the Expos now play as the Washington Nationals. But we're talking about Winter Classics today in the spirit of the Winter Classic tomorrow. I saw an Instagram post about Winter Classics and why there aren't any in Canada, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea. Interesting idea nonetheless. These are the top 10 stadiums in Canada in relation to seating capacity. Just general stadium capacity is a better way to put it because there's standing room too. Number one on the list in all of Canada, the biggest arena capacity is home to the CFL's Edmonton Elks, capacity of 56,302. We're going to fly through this list a bit. Montreal is number two on the list. It's Olympic Stadium where the Montreal Expos played. I don't think they have a tenant now. 56,040. This little denotation means it has a retractable roof. Whether that retractable roof works or not is a big question, especially at Olympic Stadium in Montreal, because, I don't know, they've had so many issues with that roof, and they spent so much money just trying to make the roof functional sometimes. So I don't know if it actually works. This is kind of a Olympic Stadium, I think, is a bit of an exception to the rule as well. It's an arena that will really need a lot of work done if you are to host any type of modern day major event or sports team. It's kind of outdated. It's kind of falling apart. It's still used for certain things. It's still functional, but it needs a lot of updating and upgrading. If you are to host an event such as the Winter Classic, or maybe the Tampa Bay Rays move to Montreal, I'd love to see a baseball team back in Montreal. But that's the Expos Stadium, Olympic Stadium, whatever. Number three is Vancouver. The Whitecaps of the CFL play there, capacity of 54,500. Also retractable roof. I don't know if it's functional. I assume it is. Everything I could find says it is. It seems the roof kind of collapsed maybe like 10 or so years ago. Kind of like what happened with the Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Vikings play. So I assume it's functional, but I don't know. I live on the East Coast, or the opposite coast of a different country, so I don't have too many people I can ask and follow up with about the functionality of Vancouver, the CFL team of Vancouver's roof. Number four, you got the MLB Blue Jays playing in Toronto, 41,500 capacity, retractable roof. I think that's operational. I'm not going to lie, I don't watch a lot of Blue Jays games, even though I'm a Red Sox fan. I don't have a good reason for that. I just don't. Number five is Calgary. The Stampeders of the CFL play there. Capacity of 35,400. Already between slots 1 and 5, you have over a 20,000 decrease in capacity. That's a lot. That's a lot. Number 6, Regina. The Rough Riders of the CFL play there. 33,350 in terms of capacity. Number 7 is Winnipeg. The Blue Bombers of the CFL play there. Capacity of 33,134. Toronto again. The Argonauts of the CFL play there. Just a hair under 28,000. Ottawa in 9th spot. The Red Blacks of the CFL. I always want to call them the Redbacks. I don't know why. I always forget the L's there. 24,000 in capacity. And rounding out the list at number 10 is Hamilton, where the Tiger Cats of the CFL play. Arena capacity of 23,218. It's rivaling the capacity of a normal NHL arena such as the Montreal Canadiens. I guess a bigger NHL arena, but you're splitting hairs at this point. So of all the Winter Classic locations I looked at, and I didn't look at all of them. I wasn't super thorough, so take it with a grain of salt. I believe the smallest Winter Classic arena to host, smallest arena to host a Winter Classic is Fenway Park in Boston. Again, I could be wrong. I did not look up the capacities of every single Winter Classic that's ever happened. Haven't even looked up the capacity of, was it T-Mobile Field? It used to be Safeco Field where the Seattle Mariners play. They're hosting the Winter Classic tomorrow. Don't know what the capacity is for that. Fenway Park, though, in Boston, where the Red Sox play, capacity 37,755. Right off the bat, that slots in the 5 spot ahead of Calgary. Okay. So you're really talking about a team that needs to be in the top four for seating capacity already to be financially viable, I guess. The actual attendance at Fenway Park last year, one I went to, the only one I went to, 39,243. There's standing room, there's extra seating, and so on. There's like meet and greets, right? You can sit in the dugout or whatever of the baseball stadium. So, what does this come down to? Why hasn't there been a Winter Classic in Canada? Well, honestly, it's a good question and kind of a good debate the more I dive into it. So, at the end of the day, we know the NHL loves their money, right? You got digital board ads, you got board ads on the glass behind the goalie, you got jersey ads, you got helmet ads, you got expansion team fees, you got the NHL talking about expanding more in the future, increasing their expansion fees, you got the Ottawa Senators being sold, and there's a fee that goes to the NHL in exchange. The NHL loves their money, right? You got the ESPN TV deals. Like, I could go on and on. You got the jersey deals. There's a lot. At the end of the day, this is a money-making event for the NHL, and there's two goals. One is immediate return on investment, which is the amount of money you're making at this singular event, and the other is new fans that will give you future profits, right? So, I don't know where my hands are. One's off the screen. Immediate money, future profits, right? That's two major things. Obviously, like, I don't have an into the NHL. This is purely an outside perspective. So, again, if you have any more additional insight or other ideas that maybe I haven't thought of, please let me know. Drop them in the comments. Like, this is a fun conversation. So, talking about expected capacity, it'd probably have to be in the top four. Now, Toronto, kind of, even with that roof, not really an outdoor feel to, I don't know, the arena, even when the roof is open. And for that, I would say Toronto, probably not very likely. Now, you could make a case for Edmonton or Vancouver. I think both would be very intriguing. Edmonton hosted, what was it, the Heritage Classic last year. It was the Battle of Alberta with the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames, and that did very well, and that was a beautiful, beautiful spectacle. That was a lot of fun to watch. One of the better rivalries in hockey. Make of what you will of the jerseys in the game, but like, it's one of those fun events, and it made a lot of money for the league. So, why wasn't the Heritage Classic just the Winter Classic? Why did Boston get to host a third one instead of Edmonton? Part of it is new fans. I think, even in a large hockey market in the U.S., Boston, you're still fighting with three other major sports teams for fan and for viewership. Same with Pittsburgh. Right, you're fighting a lot more for those fans than you are in either Calgary or Edmonton. So you're still fighting for new fans. The amount of new fans you're going to generate from an event like this may be not a whole lot in comparison to like the Florida Panthers in Miami, or like I don't even know, like the Dallas Stars or something, right? And I think that's why we're seeing the Seattle Kraken play the Vegas Golden Knights in the Winter Classic tomorrow. There's a lot of opportunity for new fans, especially in Seattle, especially after losing the Seattle Sonics, the NBA team. They have Seahawks fans, they have Mariners fans. They're pretty diehard sports fans over in Seattle. Much respect. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to really grow that market as a hockey market. And I think the NHL sees that. So there's a lot of opportunity for a future return on investment in Seattle. Vegas too, now that you have every major sports team, assuming the MLB officially like gets an arena deal done in Vegas and all that stuff goes through, like now you have four major sports teams in Las Vegas. So now you're really fighting for fanship or viewers and fandom in Vegas as well. So again, there's a lot more return on investment in the future. Whereas Edmonton and Calgary, you're not really making new fans, right? So I'll use my example as the Winter Classic in Boston last year, right? A lot of Bruins fans in Boston. It's great. The arena was great. It was sold out. It was fun. It was a cool atmosphere. Don't know if I'd go back to one, but that's a conversation for another video. There were a lot of people outside of the arena without tickets who were hanging out, who were buying programs, who were buying merch, who were getting, I don't know, like sausages from those sausage stands outside of Fenway Park. There's a ton of bars, a lot of restaurants. There's some pool halls. You can go places. You can go bowling. A lot of people go bowling. There's like a open bar. Well, not open bar, but there's a bar like a bowling alley nearby. There's a lot to do in the area, right? And people were doing that. The whole area was packed. It was packed. I went to go grab a pre-game drink over at the Boston Common area. Went to a random hole-in-the-wall bar. They didn't sell food. There were a lot of Bruins fans in the area, and you still had to take a train to get to Fenway Park, which is in another side of the city. I had a buddy who was in the north end of Boston with sending me pictures of all of the Bruins fans watching the game at just some random bars, in restaurants. And it's a whole community thing. And think of it as a kid, you're going to Fenway Park. It's a historic ballpark, right? And you're going to see an outdoor hockey game that may potentially never happen again in this stadium. That can really change your view and perspective and kind of make you grow into a hockey fan. Whereas, on the contrary, in Canada, hockey fans are born at birth. Like, as soon as they're born, hockey fans. I know that's an aggressive statement, and it's not applicable to everybody, and there's Canadians that don't like hockey, but for the most part, in comparison, hockey is huge in Canada compared to the U.S. So there's a lot more opportunity in the U.S., and I know I've emphasized that quite a bit. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for new fandom in Canada, because you're really engulfed in the hockey culture in Canada, whereas in the U.S., you're really not. Like ESPN, it's basketball all the time. You get a little bit of football mixed in, you get a little baseball mixed in, but hockey, even though the NHL has a TV contract with ESPN, ESPN does almost nothing in related to hockey because it's not the most popular sport in the U.S. It's not what's going to get them viewership numbers. So just a little food for thought. In terms of the arenas, I think the only two viable arenas to actually hold a Winter Classic event would be the 1 and 3, Edmonton and Vancouver. Edmonton, I think, is a little less likely because they most recently had the Heritage Classic last year. And I think they've hosted another, was it another Heritage Classic? They hosted another outdoor event at that stadium a few years ago. Vancouver, I think, would be very interesting. I don't know much about this stadium, or I really don't know anything about the Whitecaps home field, so I can't speak to it too much. It could be a great idea. It could end up being a terrible idea. If you're familiar with this, let me know, because I don't know. But it's also one of those things where maybe this year I would have loved to seen Seattle and Vancouver play in a Winter Classic, and I don't know, maybe you do a back-to-back Winter Classic thing, right? New Year's Eve, you have them play a Winter Classic Part 1 in Seattle, and then you have a back-to-back Part 2 you're playing in Vancouver or something, right? And I only say that because there's a lot of opportunity for fans in Seattle. It makes a lot of sense to have the game in Seattle, but at the same time, you got to show Canada some love. There are, 7 professional hockey teams in Canada. There's still opportunity, right? You're going to, even in Regina, I think that would be interesting. I really like the idea of some type of event happening in Winnipeg, especially like a Winter Classic or something. You have such a melting pot of fan bases over in Winnipeg. I think there's opportunity. You put them against, you could put them against a team like the Minnesota Wild, who they've had kind of some brutal games lately. I don't even remember where they lost their team to. Was it Arizona? You could have them play against Arizona in Winnipeg or something. And I mean, assuming Winnipeg gets their ducks in a row with the fandom and Arizona ends up staying in Arizona, right? That could be an intriguing matchup. But you also want them somewhat comparable in the standings. So maybe in a couple of years, if Winnipeg sustains the success and all of a sudden Arizona's a playoff team, you're going to have a competitive game. You're going to have a competitive matchup. It's going to bring viewers regardless. But personally, if I was here just watching if I was just watching 2 Canadian teams play, honestly, as an American fan, like I don't really care. I'm not that invested. Your viewership in Canada will be sky high, but it usually is. Whereas your viewership in the U.S. is going to be pretty low. Like I'm not going to go out of my way to watch the Montreal Canadiens play the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like I get it's kind of a rivalry thing, but like at the same time, like cool. It doesn't really do it for me. And there are markets I would love to see kind of bolstered up a bit. Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, you don't really need to bolster up those markets to an extent. I think you can do a little bit of work in Winnipeg. I think you can do some work in Ottawa. I think Ottawa would be a lot of fun. I don't know how you make it work in Ottawa with a 24,000 seat arena, but it's one of my favorite fan bases in Canada, which much respect to Ottawa Senators fans. But you know, even a game in Regina, I think would be really cool. The issue, so this is kind of where we get into the issue with the smaller cities, right? You go into Regina, like it's what is it like an 8-hour drive from Winnipeg, and you're just going west. And then I don't even know what is it like a 10-hour drive from like Calgary or Edmonton, or I don't even know. Like it's kind of isolated. It's definitely a small market. It's kind of like in the middle of nowhere, really. So getting fans to this event, I'm sure it would sell it. I'm sure it'd be fine. But the extracurricular activities that are going on around the arena and around the city probably pale in comparison to a larger market, such as Vancouver, such as Montreal. Do I think there should be a Winter Classic played in Canada at some point? Yes. The issue is where and are you going to get your return on investment? Because these things they're not cheap to set up. It's more of a spectacle thing. It's more to draw in new fans, right? You make some immediate money. You help bolster the economy. You get future fans in who are buying merch and buying tickets and making videos on YouTube like this guy over here as like a hobby. So it'd be interesting. I don't know. I really I don't see it happening in Toronto. I don't. I think it would be an absolute ball in Toronto. I think you'd sell out instantly. Ticket prices would be absurd. They were absurd in Boston last year. They're probably going to be more absurd. Like I think I paid like $950 for my ticket, and that was a cheap ticket. I was paid the least amount of everybody else in my row, which is insane. That's US dollars. I'm sure it'd be more pricier in Toronto. But where do you play, right? Who are you? What new fans are you bringing in? But at the same time, it's the Winter Classic. You're kind of celebrating the history of the team, history of the league. And Canada has a lot of NHL and just hockey history, which is always great to celebrate. So, do I think it's going to happen in the immediate future? No. Do I think it should happen in the future? Yes. But you have to pick your location smart. You have to be smart about where you're picking a location. So, that's kind of a rundown. Capacity, major. You're going to get a few extra thousand seats out of a hockey game, especially in a baseball arena. You're going to get 2, 3, I don't know, a few extra thousand. Football arena, you're going to have bleachers and field seats, hopefully. Remember, these arenas need to be big. Like, you need to have a lot of surface area because it's not just the hockey game that's going on. There are concerts. There's random events. Like in Boston last year, they had like a shooting, like you're shooting with the puck or something. You had like the Bruins legends coming out shooting something like pucks. I don't know. There was like a band in center field, and you got the big scoreboards going on, and there's like fireworks happening. So you need a lot of space, extra space for that you're not going to sell tickets at those locations. So you need field space. You can't just add a ton of seats and be like, oh, look, it's fine. Even though that would probably be fine. Again, spectacle. Think spectacle. So that's it. I'm starting to ramble. Let me know what you think. Where would you like to see a Winter Classic if it were to be played in Canada, or where in general in the U.S., where would you like to see a Winter Classic be played as well? Again, think of return on investment, immediate return on investment, ticket sales, merch sales, local restaurant and economy sales and all that stuff, and future return on investment. So future fans who will spend money on the NHL for many years to come, which I think is also, it's probably equally, if not more important. This is more of an investment in my opinion, of the NHL. But you also need to make it sustainable so you're paying it off every year to an extent. But you're also returning on investment for many years to come. So that's it. That's all I got. I appreciate you guys. Take care, all right?